made it small, made the waitress small. The waitress didn't flinch. She stood there with her notepad, steady, patient, still. She had been laughed at before, many times, in many rooms, by many people who heard her accent and decided it meant she was less. But this time was different, because this time, the woman laughing was about to walk into a boardroom on Monday morning. She was about to sit in her usual seat, second from the head of a mahogany table on the 14th floor of a building in Midtown Atlanta. She was about to watch the door open. And the person walking through that door, the new owner of her entire company, was going to be the waitress. The same face, the same accent, the same woman she had just mocked over a bottle of water in a 12-table restaurant on Buford Highway. And the boardroom was going to go very, very silent. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to Thursday night. Let's start with the laugh. Cynthia Rawlings never walked into a room. She arrived, heels first, chin high, eyes scanning, in every step measured, every glance sharpened to a point. She was the kind of woman who could silence a table of executives with nothing but a raised eyebrow and 3 seconds of eye contact. On this particular Thursday evening in October, she arrived at Osei's Kitchen, a small West African restaurant tucked between a barbershop and a nail salon on Buford Highway, with the same energy she brought to boardrooms. Superiority. She didn't choose this restaurant. Her assistant did. On something about a client meeting. The client loved African food. Cynthia didn't care about African food. She cared about the deal, the Whitmore account, $7.8 million. The biggest contract her firm, Pinnacle Strategy Group, had pursued in 3 years. Her firm. She said those words the way some people say, "my children," with possession, with the unspoken understanding that everything within those walls existed because of her. Pinnacle Strategy Group sat on the 14th floor of the Equitable Building in Midtown Atlanta. 42 employees, glass walls, Italian marble. Cynthia was Senior Vice President of Client Acquisitions, second in command. The CEO, a man named Mr. Achebe, lived abroad and ran things through emails and quarterly calls. A ghost with a signature, which meant Cynthia ran things, and she ran them her way. "This place," she said. Pulling open the restaurant door and scanning the interior like a woman asked to sit on a public bus. "You're joking." The restaurant was small, 12 tables, warm lighting, walls painted deep terracotta with framed photographs of West African markets. The smell of jollof rice and grilled plantains filled the air, rich, smoky, alive. Afrobeats played low from a speaker behind the counter. The floors were clean but old. The chairs didn't match. The menus were laminated. It was the kind of place where the food made you close your eyes on the first bite. Cynthia saw none of that. She saw small. She saw cheap. She saw beneath her. "The client wanted this location specifically," said Derek Mensah, her junior associate, trailing behind her with a leather portfolio. "The client will get over it when I present numbers that make his current firm look like a lemonade stand," Cynthia said, sitting down without waiting to be seated. She placed her Hermes bag on the chair beside her, pulled out her phone, didn't look at the menu, didn't look at the restaurant. The waitress appeared 40 seconds later. "Good evening. Welcome to Osei's Kitchen. My name is Adwoa. Can I start you with something to drink?" The accent was thick. West African. Ghanaian, specifically. Though Cynthia wouldn't have known the difference and wouldn't have cared. The words were careful, measured. And the English was functional but imperfect. Vowels stretched where American English kept them short. Consonants landing with a weight that came from a mouth trained in a different language first. Cynthia looked up from her phone. She looked at the waitress, and something in her face shifted. Not curiosity, not warmth, amusement, the kind of amusement that is the first cousin of cruelty. Adwoa Sarpong stood at the edge of the table holding a small notepad. 31 years old, 5'5". Slender but strong. The kind of strength that comes not from gyms but from years of carrying things heavier than weights. Dark brown skin with deep mahogany undertones. High cheekbones. Large dark brown eyes that were steady and patient. Black hair pulled back in a simple low bun. No jewelry, no makeup. Clean black apron over a plain white shirt and black pants. Flat shoes that had been resoled twice. "I'm sorry," Cynthia said, leaning forward. "Can you say that again? I didn't quite catch it." Adwoa blinked. "Of course. Can I start you with something to drink?" Cynthia tilted her head, smiled. The smile didn't reach her eyes. "Something to drink," she repeated, mimicking Adwoa's accent, stretching the vowel, hardening the consonant. She turned to Derek. "Did you catch that, Derek? Something to drink?" She laughed. Not loud. Worse. A quiet, controlled laugh. And the kind that says, "I find you amusing the way a child finds an insect amusing before pulling off its wings." Derek looked at the table. He didn't laugh. Adwoa stood still. Her notepad didn't move. Her face didn't change. Her eyes held steady, fixed on a point just above Cynthia's head. The technique of a woman who had been mocked before. Many times. She said nothing, because Adwoa had learned a long time ago that some battles are not won with words. They are won with time. Water," Cynthia said. "Bottled, not tap, if you have it." "We do," Adwoa said, steady, clear, unhurried. She turned and walked toward the kitchen. She had crossed an ocean with nothing. She was not going to break over a laugh. Adwoa placed the bottled water on the counter and stood there for 4 seconds. 4 seconds to feel the heat rise in her chest. 4 seconds to let the sting touch the edges of her composure. 4 seconds to remember who she was and where she had been and why a woman laughing at her English was not, would never be, the hardest thing she had survived. Then she picked up the water and walked back out. Because Adwoa did not have the luxury of feelings tonight. Thursdays were the busiest night at Osei's kitchen. 8 tables full. Kitchen running hot. 2 servers called in sick. Just her and a 17-year-old busboy named Kofi, who was still learning to carry 3 plates at once. Aunt Adwoa was the waitress tonight, but she was also the owner, and the head cook, and the bookkeeper, and the woman who mopped floors at midnight and unlocked doors at 6 in the morning. Osei's kitchen was named after her father, Kwame Osei, a fisherman from Elmina who told his daughter every night before she fell asleep that she had a mind like a river. It would find its way no matter what stood in front of it. He died when she was 14. Her mother followed 2 years later. Our Adwoa raised herself, raised her younger brother, sold groundnuts on the roadside in Accra, saved every pesewa, won a scholarship from a flyer taped to a market stall, flew to America at 22 with 1 suitcase and 400 words of English. 400 words. She now spoke 3,000. But her accent remained. Because accents don't leave. They are not mistakes. They are maps. Proof of everywhere a person has been. What languages shaped their mouth. What prayers they said as children. Adwoa's accent was Twi wrapped in English. Elmina wrapped in Atlanta. A woman who had learned her 4th language in her 20s and used it to build a business, raise a child, earn a degree, and serve food to people who sometimes heard her voice and decided she was less. She set the water on Cynthia's table. "Is your chef any good?" Cynthia asked. "Because if the food is as rough as the decor, we might need backup from somewhere else." She spoke slowly. "The way people speak to children, or to dogs." Adwoa's jaw tightened 1 millimeter. "The food is very good, ma'am. Our jollof rice is from my mother's recipe. The grilled tilapia is fresh." "Fine," Cynthia waved. "Whatever the client likes. I don't eat this." What Cynthia didn't know, what she couldn't know, because she never asked, was that Adwoa held a bachelor's degree in economics and a master's in business administration from Georgia State, and that Osei's kitchen was one of 7 businesses she owned. that she still worked the floor every Thursday because her father told her a leader who forgets the floor will lose the building. What Cynthia didn't know was that Adwoa Sarpong was the sole owner of Sarpong Holdings, a private investment company with a portfolio valued at $94 million. What Cynthia didn't know was that Adwoa had just purchased a 62% controlling stake in Pinnacle Strategy Group, Cynthia's firm. What Cynthia didn't know was that Adwoa was not the waitress at this dinner. She was the client. She waited for someone important. She had no idea that person had already taken her order. By 7:45, Cynthia was checking her phone every 90 seconds. By 8:15, she was furious. "Where is this client? I did not come to this place to be stood up." "The message from Mr. Achebe's office said the client would meet us here," Derek said. No name was given." "What kind of client requests a restaurant like this?" Cynthia said loudly. "Someone who couldn't get a reservation at a real restaurant?" Adwoa was 3 feet away, refilling water glasses. She heard every word. She walked to Cynthia's table. "Can I get you anything while you wait? The kelawale is fresh, fried plantains with ginger." "I know what kelawale is," Cynthia snapped. She didn't. What I don't know is why my client is late and why I'm sitting in a restaurant where the waitress can barely speak English." The table beside them went quiet. Derek closed his eyes. 3 seconds of silence. Then Adwoa spoke. Something in her voice shifted. Not louder, deeper. "Your English is very clear, ma'am. It only has 1 language behind it. Mine has 4. That takes a little more room in the mouth." She smiled. Small, controlled, and the kind of smile that lands like a slap without raising a hand. Cynthia's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in years, she had no response. "I'll bring the kelawale," Adwoa said. "On the house." She walked away, and Cynthia sat in the silence Adwoa left behind and felt something she hadn't felt since she was a junior analyst being screamed at by a partner at her first firm. Small. She felt small, and she hated it. By 8:30, the client still hadn't arrived. When Cynthia dropped 2 20s on the table, $53 short of the bill, grabbed her bag, and left. Derek quietly added 3 20s from his own wallet. He looked toward the kitchen, mouthed 2 words to Adwoa through the pass window. "I'm sorry." Adwoa gave a single nod, the kind that says, "I know. It's not you." After they left, Adwoa pulled out her phone. "Mr. Achebe, it's Adwoa. I was here tonight. I did not introduce myself. I wanted to see how she treats people when she doesn't know she's being watched." She paused. "Monday morning, the boardroom, 9 a.m. Don't tell her who I am. She'll find out when she needs to find out." She hung up, picked up Cynthia's 2 20s, placed them in an envelope, wrote on it, "For Monday." Then she went back to work. She had no idea the ground beneath her was already gone. Cynthia spent the weekend in her usual rhythm: gym, brunch, shopping. And she called her mother Sunday night. 4 minutes. It always lasted 4 minutes. "I'm busy, Mom. The Whitmore deal is Monday." "I know you're busy, baby. You're always busy. That's how success works." "I know. I just miss you." 4 minutes. She hung up, set an alarm for 5:30 a.m., laid out her armor: charcoal blazer, silk blouse, red-soled heels. Monday morning, an email waited. Subject: Monday, 9 a.m., Executive Boardroom, mandatory. A key stakeholder would be in attendance. Cynthia dismissed it as another investor tour. Handshakes and nods and gone. She had no idea what Monday was ready to do to her. 12 seats, 11 filled, 1 empty, and the woman walking through the door was the last person she expected. Cynthia arrived at 8:47, 13 minutes early. Early meant control. She took her usual seat, second from the head, the power seat. By 8:55, 11 senior leaders filled the room. At 8:59, Mr. Achebe appeared on screen from a hotel suite abroad. As some of you know, Pinnacle Strategy Group has undergone a change in ownership. A private entity has acquired 62% of the firm. This investor will take an active role. She holds the title of majority owner and chairwoman. Cynthia's chin lifted. She could work with a woman. She could manage a woman. Please welcome the new chairwoman. The boardroom door opened, and Adwoa Sarpong walked in. Not in an apron, not carrying a notepad, not standing at the edge of a table. And she wore a tailored emerald green dress, black heels, gold stud earrings, a single gold bangle, her hair in a sleek low chignon, the same high cheekbones, the same steady dark brown eyes, the same woman, completely different context. She walked to the head of the table, sat down, placed a thin leather folder in front of her, folded her hands, and looked at the room. 11 faces looked back with curiosity. One face looked back with horror. Cynthia was staring at Adwoa with an expression that started as confusion, traveled through recognition, and arrived, in 4 seconds, at devastation. The waitress, the accent, the mimicking, the underpaying, the dismissal. That waitress was sitting at the head of the table. That waitress owned 62% of everything Cynthia had built her career inside of. "Good morning," Adwoa said. Her accent was the same, every syllable. "My name is Adwoa Sarpong. I am the founder of Sarpong Holdings. As of last Friday, I am the majority owner of Pinnacle Strategy Group." The voice that had said, "Can I start you with something to drink?" was now saying, "I own this company. I built my first business with $600 and a recipe my mother taught me before she died. I manage 7 companies across 4 industries. I hold 2 degrees. I speak 4 languages." She paused. Some of you are wondering why I still work the floor of a restaurant on Thursdays. My father was a fisherman. He told me a captain who forgets the sea will lose the ship. I don't forget." She opened the folder. "Now, let's talk about the future of this firm." She did not look at Cynthia. She didn't need to. Everyone else already was. Right now, if this story is hitting different, if you've ever watched someone powerful realize they're not as powerful as they thought, hit that subscribe button. Because in these stories, the proud always stumble, and you don't want to miss the moment they fall. She had 2 choices. Only one of them would save her. After the meeting, Adwoa called Cynthia into the corner office. Door closed, skyline behind her, leather folder on the desk. "I'm going to tell you something," Adwoa said. "Not as your boss, not as the woman from Thursday, as a person." Cynthia sat rigid, her mess bag clutched against her stomach like a shield. "I grew up in Elmina. My father died when I was 14, my mother at 16. I came to America with 400 words of English. Every word I've learned since, every single one, I earned. Through work, through study, through being laughed at in rooms like the one we were in Thursday." She paused. "My accent is not a flaw. It is a record. When you mocked it, in my father's restaurant, you weren't exposing my weakness. You were exposing yours." Silence. The skyline stretched behind her. "I have your 2 $20 bills. You underpaid by $53. Derek covered the rest from his own pocket." Cynthia closed her eyes. "Derek also mouthed, 'I'm sorry,' as he left. He didn't owe me that, but he gave it, because that is who he is." A tear slid down Cynthia's cheek. "I've reviewed your performance," Adwoa continued. Your numbers are excellent. Your client acquisition rate is the highest in company history. By every metric, you are one of the most talented executives I've encountered." Cynthia looked up, surprised. "But your leadership is toxic. 3 complaint filings in 6 months. 2 analysts transferred to escape you. The way you treat people you perceive as beneath you. That is not leadership. That is fear wearing a blazer." The words landed like stones in still water. "2 options," Adwoa said. "See, option 1, resign today, generous severance, clean reference, no humiliation." She held up a second finger. Option 2, stay. But everything changes. Leadership development program. Handwritten apologies to every person you've mistreated. 14 of them. You work directly with me on the Whitmore account. And every Thursday for 6 months you volunteer at Osei's kitchen. Not as a guest, as a server. Same apron I wear. You're serious. I'm always serious. And that's something you would have known about me if you had asked a single question Thursday instead of laughing at my voice. Silence. Take the weekend. Think about who you want to be. Not who you've been. Who you want to be. She stood. Walked to the door. Stopped. One more thing. You told your friends my restaurant smelled like someone's grandmother's kitchen. Cynthia's blood went cold. It does, Adwoa said quietly. That's the highest compliment anyone has ever paid it. My grandmother's kitchen is the reason I'm alive. She walked out. The door closed softly, and Cynthia Rawlings broke. She lowered her chin. The tears came, and she let them. 6 months later, the woman who laughed at the waitress became one. Cynthia chose option 2. Not immediately. She spent the weekend stripped of every defense. She didn't call her friends. She didn't shop. She called her mother. It lasted 47 minutes. First time in 11 years it went past 5. And her mother said something that landed in her chest and stayed. Baby, you were always so smart. But somewhere along the way you started thinking being strong meant being hard. And those are not the same thing. Monday morning. Adwoa's office. 2 words. Option 2. Adwoa nodded. The apron is in the kitchen. Thursdays at 5. The first Thursday was humiliation. She couldn't carry 3 plates, spilled water on a customer, mispronounced banku, and a 10-year-old corrected her. She stood in the kitchen at 9 p.m. with aching feet wanting to quit. She didn't quit. By week 3, she knew the regulars. Mr. and Mrs. Boateng, Thursday at 6:30, same order for 31 years. Kofi the busboy, saving for college, studying chemistry flashcards on breaks. Auntie Grace at table 2, telling stories about her late husband who sang to his cocoa trees because he believed they grew better with music. By week 6, she stopped seeing customers. She saw people, and people with names and rituals that mattered. By week 10, she caught herself laughing genuinely at something Kofi said. He mispronounced stoichiometry. She corrected him, gently, not to diminish, to help. She stood holding a mop and felt something shift inside her chest. The 14 handwritten apologies went out in week 4. Specific, raw. She named each moment, named what she said, named what it must have felt like. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Adwoa had told her, an apology that asks for forgiveness is a transaction. A real apology is a gift with no return address. 11 responded. 3 didn't. And Cynthia learned to sit with that silence. Derek's reply was one line. I saw who you could be before you did. I'm glad you're seeing it now. She kept it in her wallet. By month 4, her leadership transformed. Teams stopped fearing her and started following her. Junior analysts brought ideas instead of hiding. 2 transferred employees requested to return. The Whitmore account closed in month 5, $7.8 million. Cynthia led the presentation. Adwoa sat in the back, watching. When the client signed, Cynthia didn't say, I landed it. She said, we landed it. First time she ever used that word and meant it. The room went silent twice that year, once in shame, once in something far more powerful. 6 months to the day, Adwoa called an all-hands meeting, same boardroom, on same 14th floor, but the chairs were arranged in a circle. The mahogany table pushed aside. No barriers, 42 employees, every level. Adwoa stood in the center. 6 months ago, I walked into this room and most of you had never seen my face. I want to share something today, not about the company, about a person. She looked across the circle. Cynthia, would you come here? Cynthia walked to the center. Charcoal blazer, heels. But her face was different, open, and the face of a woman who had learned that strength and softness can live in the same body. 6 months ago, Adwoa said, you laughed at my accent, mocked my English, underpaid the bill, told your friends my restaurant smelled like a street market. The room was silent. I gave you a choice. You chose the apron. You wrote 14 letters. You learned the names of people you would have walked past without seeing. She paused. Do you know why I didn't fire you? Cynthia shook her head. Because when you were mocking my accent, I saw something behind your eyes, something you'd been hiding for a long time. Cynthia's breath caught. Loneliness, Adwoa said. Deep, old, heavy loneliness. The kind that makes a person build walls so high they forget there was ever a world on the other side. I recognized it because I carried it too. After my parents died. After I came to America alone. She took Cynthia's hands. The difference is, I let people in. I let the regulars become family. I let Kofi become the son I mentor. I let Auntie Grace become the grandmother I lost. I opened the door. You kept yours locked. And the longer it was locked, the harder you became. And the harder you became, the more you hurt people. Not because you were evil, because you were alone. Cynthia was crying. Full crying. The kind that sounds like relief. I didn't fire you because I don't believe people are their worst moments. I believe people are what they choose after their worst moments. And you chose the apron. She reached into a bag, pulled out a folded piece of fabric, a black apron, clean, new. 2 words embroidered in gold thread on the chest pocket. Osei's kitchen. This is yours, not for punishment, for belonging. You are a permanent member of the Thursday night family, not because you have to be, because you earned it. Cynthia took the apron and held it against her chest the way she used to hold her Hermes bag, but what she held now was worth more. How do you say thank you in Twi? She asked. Adwoa smiled. Medas. Cynthia wiped her face, looked at 42 colleagues who had watched her be broken and rebuilt. Medas, she said. Her accent was terrible, and it was the most beautiful word anyone in that room had ever heard. The room didn't applaud. Something better happened. They nodded. 42 people, one by one. Not forgiveness. That would come later, from some, and not from others, and both were okay. Not approval. Acknowledgement. We see you. We see who you're becoming. And that is enough. The boardroom went silent twice that year. Once in shame, when a woman who thought power meant cruelty met the person she had underestimated. Once in grace, when that same woman stood in a circle, held a black apron, and spoke a word in a language she was only beginning to learn. Same room, same silence. But the second silence was different. The first said, "You are exposed." The second said, "You are becoming." That Thursday, Adwoa went back to Osei's kitchen, tied her apron, wiped tables, took orders from regulars who had no idea she owned 7 companies. At 6:30, the door opened. Cynthia walked in, not in heels, flat shoes, not in a blazer, plain white shirt. She tied her apron, picked up a notepad, walked to table 7. "Good evening, Mr. Boateng, Mrs. Boateng, the usual?" "Mr." Boateng smiled. "You remembered." "I remember everything now," Cynthia said, and she meant it. From the kitchen, Adwoa watched through the pass window. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She stood there, a woman in a black apron, in a restaurant named after her father, watching someone choose to be better. That was enough. That was always enough. Fate doesn't shout. It doesn't announce itself with thunder or trumpets. Fate moves like water, quiet, patient, finding every crack, wearing down every wall that was never supposed to be there. Cynthia built walls for 15 years. built them with cruelty and control and the kind of loneliness that disguises itself as strength. Built them so high she couldn't see over. So thick she forgot there was a world on the other side. Then a woman with 4 languages and a fishing town accent and a $600 dream walked into her boardroom and said the door is open. But you have to walk through it yourself. As she walked through. And on the other side of the pride and the mockery and the shame and the apron and the 14 letters and the 47-minute phone call and the word Midas, spoken badly but spoken truly, she found what she had been looking for her entire life. Not power, not control, not the biggest office or the loudest voice. People, real people, who saw her. And that was enough. If this story moved something in your chest, then you already know what comes next. Subscribe. I'd hit the bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because these modern folk tales are not just stories, they're mirrors. And sometimes the person looking back isn't who you thought. Sometimes, that's the whole point. Fate and folk tales. The proud always stumble, but the ones who choose to kneel, they rise high.
Años exactamente, bueno, no exactamente, ¿no? Un grupo de soñadores en La Paz decidió fundar algo que trascendería generaciones. El glorioso Club Bolívar. No imaginaron que... Oye, me he esforzado al hacer el discurso. ¿Qué ponen ZZ, chat? Basta, me he esforzado, se los juro que me he esforzado, bro, basta. Por favor, me he esforzado en el discurso, respétenme un poquito, chat. Bueno, igual lo voy a leer, me la chupan, la verdad. Chat, nefastos. Son unos envidiosos, ¿saben? Son unos envidiosos. ¿En qué me quedé? No imaginaron que ese nombre se convertiría en un sinónimo de grandeza, lucha y de orgullo nacional. 101 años después, Bolívar no es solo un club, es un sentimiento que se hereda, que se sufre y se celebra. Últimamente sufrimos mucho por Robato, ¿no? Es el latido de miles de hinchas que en cada victoria y en cada caída nunca abandonan, ¿verdad? Nomás. Porque ser celeste no es una elección, es una forma de vivir. Muy bien, qué lindo, un aplauso. Bravo, bravo. Muchachos, tremendo discurso. Buenas noches, Edito, ¿cómo estás? Por lo menos ponte tu chompita, pues un busito para leer el discurso. A ver, cállate, Gabo, ¿vos quieres ser baneado? Este discurso lo he hecho en mi cama, pensando en lo que es ser bolivarista, la verdad. Un aplauso, por favor, y con ayuda también del gran ChatGPT. Un aplauso para ChatGPT. ¿Cuál era la finalización de un ratito? Dice, que estos 101 años sean solo el comienzo de muchas más llenos de alegría. Felicidades, Academia. Felicidades, Bolívar. ¡Bravo! Aplausos para ChatGPT, muchachos. Para vos no, dice. Buenas noches, muchachos, ¿cómo están? Gracias por estar aquí, perdón por prender tan tarde. La verdad estaba viendo mi serie, estaba viendo el regreso de Justin Bieber. Bueno, toda la tarde me vi fútbol, hasta vi el partido del Tigre. Vi el partido de River, vi el partido de Oriente. Las declaraciones de Martins, tremendo lo de Martins, bebé, le tiró palo a Villegas, pero bien tirado. Huevada, en su cama lo hizo todo pajeado pensando en el... No, ¿qué dice este Arielito? Oye, ¿quiénes vamos, no? Mi sobrino de quién redacta mejor. Dile eso a ChatGPT, yo no he redactado. ¿Qué me estás molestando a mí? Felicidades. Qué pasado. Pues la verdad nomás. ¿Qué quieren que les diga? A ver, ¿qué les puedo decir, muchachos? Yo no publiqué nada en mi página, la verdad no hice nada estos días. Han sido momentos difíciles. Bien triste, ¿no? Mentira. Pero no, muchachos, bueno. Quiero felicitar a todos los que son bolivaristas y hoy en día más que nunca, ¿no? Que es difícil ser bolivarista en el sentido de todo el contexto que estamos pasando con el técnico. Pero si lo ven por el otro lado también hay que sentirnos orgullosos porque hemos llegado a estos 101 años. Creo que como la institución mejor parada, tanto económicamente, futbolísticamente y dirigencialmente diría, pero no, creo que no, ahí nos falta, ¿no? Ese eslabón para poder ser una institución sólida. Y como ayer creo que lo decía Dardo Gómez en su publicación en el Cholet, que Dios mío, ¿de dónde cagan tanta plata, bebés? Más fuegos pirotécnicos que en el aniversario de La Paz, no mames. Tremendo, felicidades a los del Cholet, y a ver si pasan pues algunos monies. No, mentira. Que dijo que el dirigente tiene que estar siempre al lado del hincha, y eso es mucha verdad, y no es por darle palo a Claure, porque él tendrá sus funciones, las cosas que tienen que hacer, pero creo que por esa parte que estoy... Uy, ¿qué? No, todavía no va a arrancar la fiesta, Tucán, tranquilo. Y por esa parte creo que está bien, ¿no? Está bien. Y bueno, se vienen unas futuras elecciones donde el principal candidato es Dardo Gómez a seguir manejando lo que es este club tan bonito que es Bolívar, ¿no? Por detrás, obviamente, yo creo que tiene que haber gente que lo asesore. Espera, ¿mi gatita se echó pipí? No, ya, más bien. Me ha asustado, chicos, la verdad, me ha asustado. Ya saben ustedes, rayada está mi gatito últimamente, ¿no? No, ¿qué dice este Eddie Pox? Y bueno, muchachos, nos espera, creo, un futuro grandioso. Yo lo dije, creo que esta es una oportunidad ya con el estadio de una vez establecernos como un club de fútbol, pero serio, y fuera de ser autosostenible, que se proyecte a más, ¿me entiendes? No estancarnos en solo ser un club boliviano, sino ya empezar a soñar con, no sé, a ver, por ejemplo, la venta de butacas en el estadio, venta de marketing, merchandising, que se vaya ampliando más las sociedades, ¿me entienden? O sea, yo creo que si una cabeza maneja bien todo eso, creo que podemos despegar, ¿me entiendes? Y no estar ahí creando leyes de mierda con el gobierno, pidiendo perdón para que nos perdonen los impuestos, ¿no? Los gatos, ¿no? Entonces, creo que, o ser un club que está a punto de desaparecer, como Wilstermann, que desapareció de la liga, pero está a punto de desaparecer, pero absolutamente de todo el fútbol. O ser clubes que le están mangueando el auspicio a la UTV y chupándosela al presidente de la federación por subsistir. Entonces, creo que Bolívar es muy grande y tiene, creo que, trascender. Eso es lo que nos falta, trascender, dar ese pasito para trascender y lograr los objetivos que siempre hemos querido, ya sea una Copa Sudamericana o una Copa Libertadores, ¿no? Y siempre tiene que ir de la mano. Estos últimos años, creo que es la verdad, se han ido alejando a las generaciones bolivaristas, al hincha común, al hincha fanático, a todos los tipos de hinchas se han ido alejando del club, por justamente el mal trabajo que se ha ido realizando estos últimos años en Bolívar. ¿Qué decía Valdivia? Creo que dijo que dejó un club autosostenible. O sea, sí, no vamos a decir que no. Económicamente creo que se dejó un club autosostenible. A ver, Solís, no pidas Gartic, ya les he dicho qué cosa de Gartic. Hoy día es aniversario del club, déjame hablar a ver de mi club, Solís. Igual en el grupo de WhatsApp, no, Tucán, jugaremos Gartic. No quiero dibujar huevadas, déjame, no voy a jugar Gartic. Ya les he dicho, si quieren dibujar, agarren un cuadernito y empiezan a dibujar sus huevadas. No me vengan a molestar a mí con su Gartic. Saludos, Reyisita, ¿cómo estás? ¿Todo bien? Gartic, temática Bolívar. No, métanse su Gartic por el poto, ya les he dicho. Y bueno, muchachos, ¿en qué estaba? Es que me niego, muchachos, cada vez Gartic, basta, no quiero jugar Gartic, vayan a jugar Gartic con sus minas. Goclingo, huevadas hablas, ya, espera, ¿qué habla este Ignacio Loza, este Auri? Y bueno, muchachos, creo que sí, yo me quedo con eso. Este martes tenemos un partido muy importante en lo económico, para mí muy importante para ver qué está el club de cara a este año, porque creo que es indispensable ganarle a ese equipo. En Copa Libertadores, obviamente por los 3 puntos y más, pero pensando a futuro, creo que es muy importante que se vea buen fútbol, ¿no? Y que la gente ya esté un poquito más tranquila con el funcionamiento del equipo. Ayer contra Bebé, bueno, el día sábado contra Bebé, se jugó un buen partido, no digo que un malo partido, creo que empezaron a aparecer personas, o bueno, jugadores que no estaban apareciendo, como es el Papu Velázquez, y muchos más, ¿no? Entonces, interesante. Y bueno, apareció Cauterucho, que en el partido de Libertadores no había aparecido ni de sombra. Parece que Cauterucho solo le mete goles a equipos como ABB. Y preocupa un poquito eso, ¿no? Hoy ganó el Tigre, está puntero con nosotros. Nacional Potosí también está compartiendo la punta con nosotros y muchos más que vienen bien entonándose en lo que es este torneo, ¿no? Que empezó retardísimo y creo que nos va a pesar no solo a nosotros, sino a los demás equipos que están participando en copas internacionales, ya sea Blooming el caso, ¿no? Y otros más. Mete gol equipo chicos como Dorniro, pero Dorni ni jugó. ¿Qué dicen, chicos? ¿Qué dicen? La era Robato es la peor de todos los tiempos, bebé, tomando en cuenta el centenario que es una vez en la vida. Sí, es la peor. De los últimos 10 años se podría decir que lo de Robato es lo peor que nos pudo pasar? A ver, piensen. Es que con lo que me dice el técnico de... A ver, ustedes pónganse a pensar. Si tu técnico te dice que el objetivo era solo clasificar a Libertadores y que no estaba obligado a ser campeón, puta, ahí me la bajó mal, amigos. Sinceramente, me la bajó mal. Podía aceptarle todas sus huevadas y todo, pero cuando dijo eso, es como que hizo sentir me hizo sentir un club más del montón, ¿me entiendes? Un Nacional Potosí, una Aurora, no sé, otros equipos bien X. Así me hizo sentir, la verdad. Por eso yo no